So, Joe was a marathon runner before his injury, right? And we had the class he's referring to is just cracking me up. I maybe told the story before. We did this thing where we're at Courage Center and we were on the people were on the mat and we were what then became a thing we did in all trainings, trying to help students feel subtle sensations. And so in trainings, we'd show yoga teachers how to do this, right? And a lot of it came from we're already, remember, you got to understand these things were innovating in the weekly adaptive yoga class over a period of years and years and years, right? And so Joe was one of the guinea pig slash recipients slash innovators slash founders of a whole bunch of things that started to happen. So this was when we were starting to realize that surprisingly one of the ways to feel the overall hum in your body through your entire body, even if you lived with neurological deficit, no matter what condition you lived with, was to receive, not like work harder and flex more muscles, but to receive boundary around joints. So we developed this whole technique called calming joints, right? And I would come up with language you've heard me say before, like, your spine evolutionary just split in two and became arms, and then it split in two again and became legs. And I found there to be a lot of paradox in the fact that the sense of relief and ease very much had to do with making sure there was still a pranic connection in exactly the place that allows for mobility. If you didn't have joints, you wouldn't be able to move. But if you take the freedom and flexibility that allows and movement that allows for joints, it also um, that allows for movement and the joint, it also is a disconnect that tends to affect um, your ability to feel an overall sense of well-being. And it's not a coincidence as this culture, as we're sitting more, are wearing out joints more because it's the place that stays off the roadmap. So we developed this technique of calming joints. So one of the classes where this hit at zenith and gave me the confidence to be able to really go with it as something that became part of our trainings was Joe was in, and he was he was out of his chair, and we did this thing where we were especially pinning hips and pinning shoulders. So if someone ever pins your hips for you, it actually, and that's right around your life chakra, right? So it actually boundary around your hips. If someone comes and pins your hips and knows how to do it pretty well, anything's okay, but like unless it hurts and it pins, then imagine like a tube of toothpaste. Your life energy shoots out through your body, but more like as a warm bath, a subtle wave, right? And so we'd have people. I hope this isn't too much detail, but it's fine. It's fun. I'm trying to also show you some about joints. So we'd have a yoga teacher stand, like Bethany would stand over Joe while he's laying on his back and get her ankles, step over him, a foot on each ankle, and kind of cinch her way in, right? And there's a kind of a magic spot that we figured out that happens. Like, so you'd sink your way in and she would bend her knees and then squeeze in. And then when she straightens her knees, another level of force goes in, and that would set the wave running. But that water would be kind of be going in all directions. And then the teacher would lean forward and put the hands on the junction in the shoulder between where the torso goes into the arm, and then push down and kind of out through the arms, but push down in a way. Think about not trying to push and correct. Think about trying to give direction to water that's flowing, right? And so you'd pin the hips and make sure that it wasn't getting lost in the emptiness of the shoulders in the joint. And that would allow for a feeling of rush from a sense of grounding to go through the entire body, right? And so we have this class where for the first time I really go for it. And Joe happens to be there, and we know he's a marathon runner. And we have this class that I can tell is just hitting in new territory and new space, and it's really freaking cool. And the class, you can everyone's kind of quiet because both for the assistants and for the students, it's like something is going on that's never occurred in that class before and maybe never occurred, right? And, and it's really good. And it's we're in Shavasana at the end of class, and I'm doing all sorts of things. We're moving arms and legs, we're keeping that sensation and doing the things, a lot of the principles we do in this class. And and we're in the Shavasana and we come out of it, and it's like kind of we're all just stunned. And I could tell Joe in particular had just a freaking deal, right? And 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 I go, Joe, so how are you feeling right now? And Joe says, Joe, it's your line now.
I said, I think what I said is there is a feeling you get when you finish a marathon, and you took it as me saying, you know, the feeling you get when you finish a marathon, and there's not a part of your body you're not aware of. I mean, you're aware of every piece of your body, every little intricate part, and that's what I felt in the pose. And I had thought that was a feeling I would never get back. And it was just a really great experience.
Yeah, I remember when he said that, he said, you know that feeling, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, I have no idea, nor do I have any desire to know the feeling of exhaustion after you cross the finish line. But it tells you that there's a feeling of hum, right? Of something that is can come out of in some methods of yoga, they really, really work you physically, because after you do that level of physical work, there can be that hum, right? And you do feel everything. And it Joe then, wheeled or had a bike
It's
that
a
did
hand cycle.
yeah, hand cycle that did it yesterday. So he actually got back to the physical feeling, having glimpsed it again through adjustments in a yoga class and breathing. So it tells you, like, in a way, the stuff we're doing and the stuff we're trying to figure out how to do in adaptive yoga is the stuff that people go for with a lot of physical activity. So the question is that feeling of contentment and rush. So I'm going to now try to take those two disparate. Congratulations, Joe, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a big deal,
Uh,
right? Um, of going to where the launching point that I was going to go for after I heard Bethany's comment was whatever it hurts my heart. So you take the story you just heard, and hopefully I didn't go into too much detail, but you visually kind of saw it, right? There was like a lot of things going on and a lot of connection. And when you live with a disability, I remember one time I did the similar thing to a student at the Yoga Journal conference in Boston, and she too was a quadriplegic, and she hadn't been out of her chair in 32 years, and it was a big deal. And we got her to get out of her chair, and we did that adjustment, and she too had a feeling that she hadn't had since before she was injured, right? Because there's certain places where you think you're all alone and you're not, right? It's just like a little bit away, right? Now that feeling is something to, like, it's kind of like shavasana. So if you've ever been adjusted by a yoga teacher in shavasana, it can touch that place, right? But what's wonderful is that beauty can touch that place. too. And receiving beauty, sometimes I hope you've in your life had that experience of having beauty kind of, you can feel it pulse through your whole body, right? And usually for me, they've been in nature, right? Um, but I've had it in front of a few paintings before, where all of a sudden you're like, oh, and your whole body goes, right? So conjure that sensation now and know that uh, part of that sensation has shavasana in it, has a distributing part of it, right? So when you sit up, when you like feel your exhale right now. So the thing about it is like, I think that if people gave themselves a more steady diet of finding beauty in the world, um, the world would get less violent and more compassionate. But being able to find beauty in the world is a luxury. Some basic other fundamentals need to be had in your life. And or you can realize that the stuff that's making your mind sore doesn't change how the fall leaves change. The earth is still staying faithful to creating beauty all the time. One of the things that I'm amazed, Molly's a really good photographer and she sees little corners of things, and so does my mom, who's an artist and a painter. They see little patterns in little pockets, right? And all of a sudden you think, no, it was actually beautiful. It just needed a frame, right? I didn't see it because I couldn't frame it. So the hands on Joe's shoulders and the hands on pinning and then ankles pinning Joe's hips was just a frame to something that was already happening, right? And it's nice because he couldn't have felt the same thing by himself. So there's a reason why you want to have a yoga teacher or someone, or at least company on the journey, right? And hopefully Mind Body Solutions does some of that. So you're sitting up straight and tall and you're thinking that there's, what I always say when I tell you to, especially at the end of class, I tell you there's a hum in your ankles, knees, shoulders, and, elbows and wrists. It's like, well, can you allow that to happen? That's a point that you don't let out a lot. Your brain doesn't let in and you don't let out, right? So a lot of the things we do when we push on our own knees and pin our hips and press on our tailbone for Satubandha, and they're just trying to get company through the joints, right? Because in order to have movement, you had to lose connection with prana. So balance your head over your neck, soften your jaw. So you're trying to simplify in centering so you can feel the river that precedes. And your life miraculously, your body miraculously brings life and surrounds the quiet. It's hard to see beauty if you're sad. Although usually my pensive spaces see beauty the best. So instead of it just being a dropping into that quiet place, we're not doing Shavasana now. Gently lift your chest thing that's so terrific about fall, if you're around to change the colors of leaves, is that things are leaving and yet they're gorgeous. So easy to pass it by. There's space between the skin on your face and your cheeks. The inside of mouth is hollow like a cave, and it kind of pulls the temples into the cave, the space in the temple. But you're lifting your chest. You're not just going away, you're coming into, like the recognition of beauty. Open to the space behind you. Let yourself be touched. Breath into each nostril, into each lung, each sitting bone, each foot. Even within what seems static, your body creates movement the entire time. It's not wasting even an instant to be alive. Let go of your day. Feel the hum. You got to follow the hum through movement. Good. And then release. Take your sternum up towards your chin. Your chin down and over your sternum. More definition, more of your spine and rib cage in this position. More support for your miraculous breath. Don't support so hard you impede your breath too much. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. I've always been envious isn't quite the same right word, but I've always admired, and I'm moving around a little bit because I want my spine to wake up. Um, um, the way that artists can see the world, right? The things that they see, right? And they're not always going for beauty, though, right? Sometimes they're going for truth, God bless them, right? Right, that's not so easy right now. In fact, if you look at 20th century art, they started to really think about the randomness in the middle of turn of the century or early in the that science was delivering, and clearly human beings are capable of, take your legs wide a little bit, you know, there isn't an order unless we make it, we're not careful. People that want power make all the rules, all the things, right? And yet the same thing is true right? You're swaying back and forth a little bit, trying to remember to feel more rather than less, not just the more part that hurts, right? The more like the space in your joints. Quite frankly, when it comes back to the center of the chest and the beauty that almost makes it hurt, it's like, I can't have that every moment of every day. I wouldn't get anything done, right? It would be exhausting. That too, in excess, would be too hard, right? Mm, man, damn Aristotle, right? Everything in moderation. So I'm pushing, I'm doing the stuff we always do to warm up, right? I'm pushing down on one leg and my hip, and on my hip on purpose, right? And I tell you things like, so I'm pushing down through my back hip, right? And I'm leaning this way, and I'm doing the very beginning parts of standing poses, right? So when you do this, you actually kind of near a whole bunch of standing poses in this core action, right? And so, and I'm lifting up and I'm separating the space in my hip from the feeling and lift in my spine, right? Which is one of the places that it's why we're pinning Joe's hips in that class, is to get a feeling of that instead of it just being an empty loss in the joint that goes beyond your mind's usual practice. You're trying to bring sensation there. So it feels and remembers that there's a river going through, right? People are leaning on their joints. By the way, I often bury pain in joints. So like that's part of why we slump and bring the shoulders up to the ears. It's because we create a hollowing right here that helps us manage pain, right? It's a natural movement. So again, I'm getting this, and then I'm just gonna catch it. I have you do this. I tell you to catch it with your chest, right? And let it go this way. So beauty at first kind of hurts you out when it comes in, but then after you've seen something beautiful, have you been able, and it's hard, to keep it through your whole day, right? That's part of why you practice yoga. You find sensations and you learn how to keep them and work with them. That's part of what your yoga practice is showing you. So again, I'm trying to get this to be more of a river. I'm trying to catch it with my chest, and I'm turn them a little bit, because then I add another dimension of sensation. But I'm doing it from grounding, right? From having my chest come in. So that we're actually kind of quickly through movement doing standing poses, right? But we're doing them seated, because we're trying to wake up. We're trying to get sensation through the places that the mind ends up taking for granted, right? It's kind of funny that the mind does that, right? And then bring your legs together. And again, we want to get that. I want to remember, because man, I've got a tendency this way. I can feel I'm gonna have to work about not getting too lost in my head this week. Right. So I'm doing that bounce again. And remember that whole class we we're pushing on our own tailbones? You remember classes from before? I hope so. Do a little bit of a hippity hop, right? Kind of go like, right? And then catch it with your chest. Start it with your tailbone. Lean forward with gravity. Lift up, but throw your tailbone up through your mouth, right? Your tailbone goes up through your mouth, right? And you're just feeling that little, and then I'm going to bounce a little bit, because dang it, it's so easy to get static. Like I can tell I've been getting static again. Too much stasis in my body, right? I'm going to put my hands onto the table, or, onto your thighs, or Put your wrist against your knees. Let's maybe put your wrist against your knees. So if you can, and then if your wrist goes against your knees and hit slightly back, you think about what you're doing there. You're actually creating grounding, right? But on your wrist and your knee, and then your knee pushes back, and the femur bone goes kind of back into the hip socket more. So you're doing something to your hips, and you lift your chest, and then you work the underside of your arms. So this feeling coming in through your femur bones is actually getting caught by the center of your chest. And then your center of your chest doesn't waste it because you broaden across the collarbones and spread between the shoulder blades and drop them. So you're catching it. And then as you do that, can you like catch it with the palms of your hands and spread your palms? I just said something super complicated. And it seemed like a simple pose. The good news is you don't have to always have it in your head. You could just do the pose too, right? Let's try it again, right? So now I was about to do dog pose with my hands on the table, which you might get back, but instead I thought not everyone can lean forward onto a table right now, so I'm going to teach it a slightly different way, right? So I'm going to put my hands again, and we're thinking about calming the empty space in the junction that allows movement, but also gets deadened because the mind doesn't know how to pay attention to the quiet, nourishing sensation in the joints, right? So now I'm putting my wrist against my knees. If you couldn't reach that and you had to do it on your thighs, that's okay. It's not the same, but my wrist against my knees, right? So now I've got grounding on my wrist. And as I just lay them there, first I'm going to feel that nourishment. I'm not going to engage my arms. I'm going to feel that I've got reference on my wrists, right? I can't feel my knees the way most of you can, but I'm going to hit back a little bit with my wrists, calming my wrists, but also activating my knees. As I hit back a little bit, I'm actually activating the river back towards into my hip socket, right? So my hip socket then catches it, right? Now I'm gonna do something even extra this time. As that happens and I catch that, I'm gonna broaden across my sacrum, across my low back. And as I do that, it starts to go up my chest. I'm gonna lift my sternum, broaden across the collarbones, spread the space between the shoulder blades, but drop the shoulder blades at the same time. Work the undersides of the arms. And suddenly, I'm breathing into the thing that gave Joe the feeling of doing a marathon. Now, as I broaden across my shoulder, my collarbones, and my shoulder blades, can I express that broadening with the center of my palms? Good, and then release. So, was that kind of a lot of instruction, I imagine? I tried to go slower that time, right? So the good news is you don't have to, your mind doesn't have to pay attention to all the particulars, but you need not to forget to activate everything. So what do? It's called a conundrum. So the best thing about repetition and practice is it solves the problem. It solves the conundrum. You just you learn how to do it all at once without having to think about it, right? But we're going to do it again. And let it be dynamic. Don't let the mind's overwhelm thing like make it not feel whole. Let's do it this time looking for the sensation of wholeness that comes from breaking the pieces apart and then into a whole sensation. All right, one more time. And this is just a version of dog pose without emphasizing the hands and feet. So again, hands here. Feel the grounding on my wrists. Let it go in through my knees. As soon as I do that, I start to feel it go back towards the base of my spine, right? I'm going to hit back now, activate, broaden across my sacrum, almost simultaneously broaden across my collarbones and between my shoulder blades. As I do that, I activate the underside of my arms. It's all being caught by the chest now. And then as I re-broaden across the shoulder blades and the sacrum, I express all this, work the underside of your arms through my palms of my hands. And I'm going to breathe for the parts that make the whole that fills the parts. And it's all coming from my spine. Good, and then release. It was always coming from your spine. Anybody not have a spine on the call? My my mind goes in very varying degrees of dysfunction, but my spine is always clicking along like a metronome. What is it called in your ear? Oh my God, I'm forgetting the word. Right? But your spine's always doing it. Right? All right. So now take your right hand up or not, take it over to the left, take the hand behind you, right? Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. So we're just twisting a little bit. Trying to twist in a way where my spine twists and my legs get fed, right? Trying to hit down, rise up, but add this extra element of twist. Good, and then release. Gonna do the other side, right? Go across, go behind, right? Take all the thing we just earned, right? I still have the imprint of everything because I'm a time traveler in my yoga practice. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. So the sequence is building on each other. I just, without meaning to, kind of went into a jawi breath. Let the echo, let the vibration of my inhale and especially my exhale help the twist go a little farther without more effort. You don't need more physical effort. Good, and then release. You need more integrative effort. So there's a difference between physical effort and integrative effort, right? Young yoga practitioners make a mistake and think so they're going to bounce around. They think that more physical effort is the same as integrative effort because they haven't seen enough falls, the season, right? They haven't seen enough falls to know that integration means taking all of it with you. So I'm lifting up again, right? So I'm still, it's a stretch. I'm going to put my elbows on the table, right? Or on your knees, right? But I'm going to work for a certain connection of my shoulder blades down and length under my tricep. Oh, I didn't really notice. You guys are following me because you put your fingers on your frontal cortex. I was, because I was doing it because I was trying to find the layer of sensation that my frontal cortex is not great at finding, right? So I'm kind of knocking it out of the picture, right? Not knocking out of the picture, but oh, you want to hear an unbelievably great line that I just heard in my head from BK Sangar, right? So, and I just did it without knowing it because that damn repetition and practice makes you do things like a yogi without you knowing it. So he's talking about dog pose and he's trying to make it restorative. And restorative yoga in Iyengar yoga is like really full of effort, just so you know. It's just in some of the hardest friggin' classes you're ever going to take. But he puts a block on the forehead. So you're coming down in traditional people that can do for the full pose are coming into the whole pose, but they're putting their forehead on a block. And he says this line that like has been speaking to me for about 18 years, right? Since I saw it on a video. He says, you have to make your brain an object so it can become a subject. What? So take your hands off your frontal cortex, right? Put your hand in your frontal cortex, make it an object. So your brain can become subject to your spine. Take your hand off your forehead, look up, and pretend you're doing a whole class. All of a sudden, Mr. In Charge here starts popping back into the pose, right? Make your brain a object of sensation so you can rejoin the river, right? So I just employed a technique that's coming from my past when I was trying to feel the connection of my elbows and I was like trying to get a certain type of connection and I was trying to get it out of thinking too hard, I naturally put my fingers or hands on my forehead so I could hear the connection of my elbows on the table and my triceps lengthening while my shoulder blades descend, right? I needed to get my frontal cortex to be out of the effort. So I make it a object of sensation so it sinks into the pose. And I can find a layer of sensation that my mind tends to block. So if you followed anything I just said, it's a huge freaking insight. So as you're doing this, breathe now. That's why that line has stuck with me for like 18 years. But don't go into Shavasana. I see one of the Catherines going into Shavasana. I can see it on the screen. No, we're going towards headstand, right? We're not going towards Shavasana. We're going to take this energy towards activation. Good. And then release. Because remember, Shavasana is in every pose, right? Right. So now I'm going to do it again and I'm going to activate from a calming energy, right? I'm going to feel my elbow, my bones. I'm giving reference on an empty space in my elbow. I'm dropping my shoulder blades, making more space in my shoulders. I'm doing versions of pinning Joe Daly's joints in my own yoga practice. I'm broadening across my collarbones to activate the empty space in my shoulders. I'm not keeping it at my shoulders. I'm lengthening my tricep towards my elbow. Oh my God, I'm going to light a match and lift my sternum. As I lift my sternum, I'm dropping my shoulder blades. And oh my God, all of a sudden my fingers feel like they're clawing into my skull because I got too much energy. So I'm going to lighten the touch on on my fingertips on my forehead. And I'm going to actually keep the level of activation. And I'm going to breathe into the whole freaking kitchen sink. Good. And then release. Anybody with me still? Yes, no. I'm looking, no one's moving their head. Okay, a little bit. Renee, I like the honesty. Did you flutter your hand or go yes? You fluttered your hand. I like it. I like ye, right? All right. Now, with the feeling of it on your forehead, put your hands into prayer. So now, with the calming mind, your hands in prayer are actually supporting your sternum. and your spine more, right? You drop your shoulder blades, you hit down through your sitting bones, broaden across your sacrum, lift your sternum, spread your hands more, your palms more to bring them closer together. Anyone, as you spread your palms, can you feel how the shoulders have to work differently? Lift the sternum, right? Hit down through your sitting bones, extend from the inner groin to the inner knee. Breathe. Good, and then release. Any better there, Renee, on that one? Little bit? Yeah. So I taught that one because I thought I could bring you into the fold again. Yeah. All right. And it's good for all of us. So now, here's the thing we weren't doing that is kind of, so take one hand and put it on your forearm or your wrist or whatever it is, and push on your forearm and push near your elbow and feel the change in your shoulder blade. And then lift your chest into your shoulder blade, into your elbow. What? Lift your chest into your elbow. Ground the shoulder blade down. Good, and then release. Now do it on the other side. So we're creating the floor of headstand, right? All right. So now I'm going to take my wrist or my elbow and push it into my forearm. I'm going to catch it in my shoulder blade. I'm going to drop my shoulder blade, lift my sternum. Soon as you notice, as soon as you let the center of your chest be touched by the colors of fall, you can feel it down through your legs. Now take that all the way down through your legs and down to your sitting bones, and then down to each leg, right? And then release, right? Do the first side again. Do the first side again. Do it faster. Now, as soon as you touch, activate your whole body. Can you activate your whole body now? Activate your whole body, then release. Do the other side. Activate your whole body and through the joints. So all we're doing is trying to get one joint to be in better communication with your entire body. We're trying to do a marathon for Joe, right? From one joint, right? And now you're going to go back to prayer for a second, but try to remember and feel the pressure on your forearms. Now you instead of prayer, you're going to put your fingers, if you can, together, right? Oops. So now I've got to make sure this part of my wrist comes forward, right? If I don't do that, I lose my shoulder blades. Now I got to feel the pressure on my forearms. But instead of, because there's no pressure there, you just have to know it drops your shoulder blades. Lift your sternum up. Broaden across your sacrum. Extend from the inner groin to the inner knees. Use the triangle of your hands together and your elbows on the table or on your thighs. Use the chest and the drop shoulder blades to fill your legs. Extend from the inner groin to the inner knee to the inner heel. Breathe into the structure. Good, and then release. That was a version of headstand, right? So now we were leveraging gravity into it with support. Now we're going to take our hands up over our head, on our head, and I'm not going to be able to feel it as well, but it's going to make me think I'm doing more what everyone else does. So now the more focused connection I had when leaning forward, I have to find again up here. So I'm going to give you instructions I always give you. length from the elbow, from the armpit to the elbow. Drop the shoulder blades. I'm going to touch my forearms here for a second to remind my brain where the forearms are, right? I have to keep that reference there. Drop my shoulder blades. As I drop my shoulder blades, I need to extend. I need to drop down through my sitting bones, broaden my sacrum, extend from the inner groin to the inner knee to the inner heel, and let my rib cage be my heart, right? And pump my breath into my rib cage so my spine can touch both the upper part of my pose and the work in my legs. The breath and the spine and the rib cage are the beating heart. Good, and then release. I like to take signs where I can get them. Right when I did the whole thing, the sun came out of my face. So I'm going to go with that. Right? I'm going to grab behind my chair. Basically, I'm just doing that to open right here. Right? I'm trying to feel some of the versions of shoulder stance. I'm going to roll my shoulders back. Try to get more activity here on this part of my ribs. Trying to open it up to support my shoulders, right? First, I'm gonna take my head back a little bit and then come in and drop my sternum down, my chin down, and lift my sternum. As I engage this, like my arms and my lift of my chest from the place where the frontal cortex is calm, I'm going to extend through my sitting bones and my legs, but with the lifted chest. I'm going to visit shoulder stand. Good, and then release. I got to move around a little bit because shoulder stand can make me feel a little bit trapped, right? Get a little bit, and even headstand, not trapped, but it's so focused that I kind of want to remember where the birdies sing, right? Because we just went so far inward that, at least I did, to feel all that. But I want to remember stuff. Right? I'm going to take my right hand outside my left leg. Take my other hand behind me. I'm going to really gently twist. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Oh, I remember that place from earlier in the class. Good. Right? I want to bring the whole class into Shavasana, right? And then take the other hand side and start to twist a little bit, real gentle, just for sensation, not to maximize the twist. Remembering the other place in the class. Good, and then come to center. So one of the things that dog pose does is makes the brain aware of the hands and feet simultaneously. So that's why I just put my hands on the table, right? Feet on the floor, but you could just do it with your hands on your thighs. Just try to open your palms or wrists against the knees again. But I'm just trying to make sure that I register. And as soon as I try to register my hands in conjunction with my bottoms of my feet to make them connect, I have to feel the space in my elbows, the space in my shoulders. I have to connect to my wrists, my hips, go through my knees to the bottoms of my feet. So I'm syncing joints. And breathing. Balancing awareness of your joints is one of the tricks to Shavasana, one of the breakthroughs. But we're practicing it in a more gentle pose. So now, if you can remember the feeling of making your brain an object so it can be a subject, but now you're doing it, remember you're practicing the joint awareness. I like to say your head's a joint. That's a little bit hyperbole, but it kind of isn't. It is a pivot point, right? So you're trying to, I just closed my eyes so I could feel the hand of my forehead while I'm feeling all my joints in a more active pose. Breathing, release. So these were all, we're obviously moving towards Shavasana. So now I'm just gonna sit in my chair, sit upright. I'm gonna bring my knees a little closer together so I can make sure the connection between my knees and my hips and my chest and my shoulders, my elbows, and my wrists actually is more overt for a second. Then for a way that I have to work, I have to surrender awareness to my ankles and my feet. That's probably because I'm a paraplegic. Good, and then release. Now I'm going to position myself in a way where I can really let the chair hold me up. Right? So now I'm really going to try to use more surrender for Shavasana. I gotta like find freedom in my neck. So I'm gonna kind of balance my head over my neck. Been pushing it forward. So now the lips together, teeth slightly apart. Remember the jaw is a joint. So you soften your jaw. In some ways, your temple's a joint. Your temples are joints. Soften those. Then release the skin on your forehead. Let your eyeballs sink. Instead of just collapsing, let there be a hum in your ankles and your knees and your shoulder, your hips and your shoulders, and your elbows and your wrists. Now, if you really want to go for it, I have an easier time letting go of my teeth, kind of joints too. But you could also try to do your fingers and your toes. Let there be space. All the while, the chair holds you up. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. The preserver of life. Thank it again. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes. I hope you're in a place that has some change of color in the fall because it's worth letting it in. Knowing how to let it touch you. So there's a line in, I got two things to say. I hope I remember them both. I just thought of this one just now. There's a line in the documentary about Ram Dass called Fierce Grace. And he had a stroke and it injured his brain. And rather than saying I had a stroke, he talks about being stroked. Stroked, right? Not just getting a stroke, right? I think that really the beauty in nature and in the fall is actually there. It's whether you can let yourself be stroked by it, right? Right? Instead of seeking it. So there's that. There was an instruction I heard from Joe Zukovich in Shavasana, I think early on in my practice, that really rung a bell with me. She said in coming out, it's harder to do when you're sitting. So this would be an instruction maybe when hopefully you practice some Shavasana when you're in bed or lying, on a yoga mat or on the floor. And sometimes words just hit you just right. Your limbs are like rivers. Let them flow. In order for your limbs to be like rivers, your joints have to be rivers. So if you can have the place where the river to the mind gets kind of lost is usually in the joints. So if you can let your limbs, like today, it would be a good yoga homework to try to feel your joints instead of as I'm trying to do it right now, instead of have places of static, you let them have flow in them, right? As you're sitting here and you learn that in Shavasana. But that's what Joe got that allowed him to feel a marathon was that, and he got it again yesterday through a lot of physical exertion and a sense of accomplishment. A good Shavasana is an accomplishment. Letting your spine feel like a river flowing out through your limbs is an accomplishment. And it comes through submission, which is weird. Right? All right, everybody. Namaste. The spirit in me bows the spirit in you.